defies cliches. He's a decorated war hero and continues to inspire with his work with the social sector and with a military think tank. Please put your hands together to welcome General Ian Cardozo. In conversation with him is none other than Sarah Jacob. Another round of applause, please. No, yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, let me just check with our camera person.
So you sit here.
It's going to be a little difficult for the camera guys to get to. Yeah, sorry. It is a bit strong, yeah.
Thank you.
So sorry for
Actually, इसको
time पे रखना।
कम टाइम में
सभी बहुत enjoy किया।
Hello? Mine's working. Yeah. Let me see if yours is on. No. Yep. It's on. Yep.
Hello.
It is. Is someone introducing us or do we just start?
What?
Is someone introducing us or we start?
I think they've already been.
Should we
Yeah.
start?
Should I start on the Discord and say we should start on time or leave it?
Can we begin? All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you can hear from the tone of my voice, I'm clearly thrilled to be here at the Kasauli Lit Fest, and I am humbled to be in conversation with Major General Cardozo. So let's hit the ground running, because we've started off on that high note. General Cardozo, you know, you're an author now, that's your latest avatar, and you have been writing, I think, for possibly 2 decades now, 7 books. Your first book was the Paramveer Chakra, right? And ladies and gentlemen, here's a little factoid. That book has gone in for 14 reprints.
14 reprints.
Imagine, wow. Since then, I think you've written about 7 books. And, you know, I don't know if we should be introducing you or you should be introducing yourself as retired Major General, because you are still serving the army. You are in an ambassador's role. You are a chronicler of army history, documenter and historian, really. And, you know, you teach and you inform the public, laypersons like me, about the uniqueness and the greatness of the Indian Army. My question to you, sir, you've been writing 7 books. You've written about military policies and wars and strategy. Why now? Why finally an autobiography? And I ask this because if you read his books, you will know that General here, Major General here, is not a fan of self-aggrandizement. He has disdain for self-promotion, and I think it's been drilled into him in his training as a soldier and an officer. And I'm sure that must have been very frustrating for your publisher, because you have one hell of a life story. So why now, and finally an autobiography?
Thank you, Sarah. Army is family, and I can see many Faujis here, including my course mate, Major General Surinder Grewal, Indrajit Dillon, and so many, General Narayanan and his wife Aparna. So we all know, we've been taught in the army, do not blow your own trumpet, do not beat your own drum, don't talk about yourself. Let others do that for you. But then two things happened which made me change my mind. I've been asked for the last 15 to 20 years to write my story. Not that I'm such a great guy, but I've led a reasonably interesting life. But then two things happened. One is that I was commanding a battalion in Thiruvananthapuram, and we had gone for a picnic to Kovalam. Although I shouldn't say so myself, I'm a very good swimmer. I've taught about 300 to 400 children how to swim. And we had gone for this picnic. It was the month of June, and the monsoons were about to start. And the sea was rough. And one of the children was caught by a big wave and carried out to sea. I taught him how to float. He started shouting for help. But there was nobody around who was capable and competent to save him. By that time, I had lost my leg, so I had to take off my leg and get the help of two young officers, because I can't hop in sand. And when sand becomes chikkat, when it becomes soft, it's impossible to hop. So they launched me into the sea. It's a long story. It's in my book. So, cutting a long story, so I swam up to this boy, and he said, Uncle, save me. I said, son, don't touch me or we'll both go. So with one hand, I was supporting his head. With the other hand, I was supporting his body. And I had only one leg to kick. But there was a string of rocks going out into the sea. And I told him, son, I'll get you there. And even if we don't get those rocks, and we go out into the open sea, somebody will come to fetch us. And I prayed to God. In my book, Beyond Fear, I was very afraid that he'd lose his life and I would be responsible. But I managed to reach those rocks and put him on top. And then it took me about half an hour, 45 minutes, to get back to shore, because the tide was running out. It was very, very strong. And there was a huge crowd watching the tamasha, and there was a bunch of journalists, and said, we want a story. I said, there's no story to tell. They said, what are you saying? I said, no, there's no story to tell. And then I met, many years later, the famous Khushwant Singh at a party. And he had kept a chair reserved for me, and he said, General Saab, come and sit with me. I want to write your story. Now, I didn't know what to do. Here was this famous man who, storyteller, a person who wasn't bothered about, he was without fear. And he did what was right, irrespective of the consequences. And I was going to say, sorry, sir, there's no story to tell. So he said, what do you mean? I said, sir, I'm an army officer. We don't talk about ourselves. He said, I am going to write your story. I said, sir, there's no story to tell. He said, is it a no or a yes? I said, sir, it's a no. So he said, okay, I will write your story, and if there are any mistakes, you will be responsible. So I said, fine. We drank a couple of whiskeys together, and I forgot about it. About 2 months later, his article appeared in the papers. It had a very, very funny heading. It said, believe it or not, we have a one-legged Goan Gurkha general in the army. So I was a little taken aback. And there were a lot of errors in the story. So I decided that this reticence of the army to talk about ourselves has resulted in what is happening today. The bureaucracy is pushing us down. Our story is not known. So I needed to tell the story, because it's not only about me. It's about my course mates. It's about the army. It's about all other army officers who serve this country. And that is why I wrote the book.
And it's only befitting that you're here as one of the key speakers, kick-starting the second day of the LitFest. And now you have the complete narrative of your story in your book. I want to ask you the last line of your book in your acknowledgements. You say, you take full responsibility for the contents of this book, which I think is the latest in the acts of bravery that you have shown all your life. Because in today's world, where everybody is always trying to hide behind, what are they called? disclaimers where to keep away the ED and to keep away the Bhakt trolls and the online bans. Here you have Major General who's saying, where is the firing squad? I'm here, direct your guns, your nozzles at me. But I want to ask you, why did you put that line in? I'm curious because I've never seen it in any book.
Again, it's all about the army. We always tell the truth. So if you're telling the truth, what's the problem? No disclaimer is required. And there are a lot of values which shape our characters, which shape our behavior, which shape our conduct. And I felt that, well, I don't judge people. That's God's job. My job is to tell the truth and tell the story as it is. And that's what I did.
Well, you've lived a life of many firsts, but perhaps the most bittersweet of them is that you are the first disabled war officer to have been authorized, given the command of a brigade and a battalion, right? When that was never done before, and the policy before you came along was that people like you should not be allowed to do that, right? It changed after you. And since then, many other disabled officers have, using you as a precedent, standing on your shoulders, gone way beyond and higher up in the command. And perhaps that is one of your greatest legacies. But I want to ask you, how did that happen?
It's a long story. When I got wounded, you see, my course-mates, my friends, all the Faujis will tell you that the only ambition of most of us is to command our battalions, command our regiments, command our units. That's what our dream is. And now, because I was fighting for India, because we won a great victory, I was now told, sorry, you've done your bit. There's no place for you now anymore. You become a babu in uniform or you leave. The government gave us a lot of concessions to help us to leave the army. But I didn't join the army, and there was a lot of money in it. But I said, I haven't joined the army for money. I joined the army for a way of life that has no parallel. It's the best way of life, I believe. Maybe some of you don't. But here, and that way of life pointed me out to my unit, to my Gurkhas. I'd lived with them. I'd been to their homes. I'd spent 2 months in their villages. I'd met their fathers and their grandfathers and their grandmothers and their children. I saw their way of life. I learned this language. I learned the dialects. I learned their songs. I learned their dances. What was left? How could I be told, you cannot go back to your troops? You are disabled. And while I was there in hospital, I read a book. It was called Reach for the Sky. It was a book about an RAF officer, Douglas Bader. He had lost both his legs in a flying accident, not in war. But the British Air Force didn't stop him from flying. He became an air ace. He shot down 23 German fighters. And then he was shot down himself. And in exiting from the aircraft, he lost both his legs. He got caught in the cockpit. And he landed and he got hurt. But the Germans were thrilled. We've captured an air ace, Douglas Bader, and the papers were full of it. So they asked him, what do you want? He said, I have a spare pair of legs in UK. Fly them out here. So it was arranged. A Dakota came, dropped his legs, gave him his legs. What did he do? He escaped. He escaped, but it was winter, it was snow. They caught him. They brought him back. They took away his legs. They put him on the first floor. What did he do? At night, he got up, crawled from bed to bed, took out the bed sheets, made a rope, tied it to a bed, and escaped once again. And again, he was crawling in the snow and he was caught. But this shows willpower, indomitable willpower to do what you have been taught to do. Never give up. And I thought to myself, if he can do that, why can't I? But I didn't know how to go about it. Army headquarters, big army headquarters, and I'm a small major. How can I fight this huge institution that I want to command my battalion, I want to be with my troops? There was no no policy. Nobody had been given command of a unit or served with troops since World War II, except 2 officers who have been promoted on the staff to brigadier's rank. But I said, I didn't know how to go about it. But I said one thing. I prayed to Upperwala, help me, show me the way. And I decided to keep myself physically fit. I ran so much that I broke my artificial leg. They gave me another leg. And I carried on running, and then God showed the way. I was posted to MO Directorate, and the the director was General Vaidya, who became the chief later on, and he said, which battalion have you commanded? I said, sir, I haven't commanded. Don't you want to command a battalion? I said, yes, sir, I do. Apply. So I applied, and then I cut the long story short, I was tasked to go with the vice chief to J&K. And he was in a chopper going from place to place. I was taking the vehicles down. At the last post, I was told at 3 in the morning that your friend is commanding this post. I said, let me go and meet him. So I didn't know I could climb. I said, let me see what I can do. I climbed about 2,800 feet, met this guy, my friend. We had breakfast together. And the vice chief came in his chopper and said, how the hell did you get here? So I said, I climbed, sir. He said, you can climb? I said, sir, what I cannot do lies in the minds of my senior officers. He said, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, sir, you have not given us the opportunity to prove what we can do. He said, okay. And then he went to the chief, General Raina, who disabled himself. He had lost an eye. And if the policy was there at that time, he would never become the chief. And the chief said, send Cardozo with me to Ladakh. And I went with him. He called for my file and he said, yes, give him a battalion and other war-disabled officers who are not taking shelter of their wounds. And that's how promotion, the rule was changed. Mind you, the chiefs at that time did not have to run to the bureaucracy or the politician to get sanction for what he did. They took decisions. And I was then given command of a battalion. And later on, I was approved for promotion to brigadier's rank. And the MS rang up and said, congratulations, Ian. He was my company commander in 15GR. You've been approved for promotion to brigadier. I said, which brigade are you going to give me, sir? He said, you can't get a brigade. You are being posted to Kundraghat as the depot, Gurkha depot commander. I said, sir, what is the criteria? That I have only one leg? He said, don't be silly. There's no precedent. So I wrote to the chief. I said, sir, I've commanded a battalion in peace and field. Higher ranks of physical fitness are required in lower ranks. If I can command a battalion, why can't I command a brigade? And the chief saw the point. He said, why are you troubling this man? Give him a brigade. And that is when General Yogi Sharma said what Sarah Jacob just said. Ian, you are carrying us on your shoulders. And then promotion opened up, and disabled officers have risen to the rank, 3 of them, Army Commander. And we, the disabled fraternity, are looking for the day when a disabled officer will become the chief.
So that's why you should pick up this book, because it is not just an autobiography, I have to tell you. It documents history, our history, and it is bursting at the seams with fact and research and goosebump-inducing stories of bravery and heroism and our history, which I'm embarrassed to say, some of which I did not know until I'd read this book. So if I could just ask you, Major General, if you could just tell us.
There is one Mercedes of black color 2887 parked in between the road, has to be removed immediately.
There is a Mercedes parked in the middle of the road that has to be removed immediately. Could you quietly slink out and tell your driver, or just park it somewhere else?
2887.
2887.
Chandigarh number 2887.
I thought I was in Kasauli, not Delhi. What's happening? All the Delhiites have come up to Kasauli. Otherwise, it's going to be towed. Okay, Chandigarh number. Major General, if you could just, on that note, tell us about, for example, how is it that at the end of the 1971 war, the Indo-Pak war, you have the 8,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendering to 356 Indian Gorkha soldiers? Just take us through that, please. It was a fascinating
Okay.
chapter.
My books, I think I don't, am I jumping the gun by saying why I write my books?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Just give us what happened then.
Okay,
I have
so-
the pages for you, I think.
So I was still in Staff College when my battalion was tasked to capture a place called Atgram. There was no artillery fire because we belonged to a division in an insurgency area, so there was no artillery. So the CO, a very brave and courageous officer, Lieutenant Colonel Arun Harolekar, decided to use the Gurkha weapon, the kukri, as a main weapon for the offensive. We attacked at night, a dark night, without arty fire. The enemy was totally taken by surprise. We cut off 32 heads. I'd like to tell you, in the army we are taught, you have to, in war, act without fear, without pity, without remorse. Bedar, without pity, bedar, berahem, bepashtawa, bina pashtawa. So that's what we did. And after that, those who ran away, who saved themselves, did not have the guts to attack us in close combat at Ghazipur and at Sylhet, the next two battles. But then, in the Battle of Ghazipur, by this time, we had entered the war, the 4th Battalion, the 5th Gurkha Rifles Frontier Force, that was my battalion. So we had lost now 3 officers killed, 4 officers wounded, so out of 18, only 11 were left. So the CO was trying to reorganize the battalion when the corps commander, General Sagat Singh, one of the greatest field commanders this country has produced, but he was a very impatient man. He wanted to be the first in Dhaka. And he said, the brigade which is holding Sylhet has moved to the defense of Dhaka. I want Sylhet to be occupied immediately. Send the Gurkhas. So the CO said, sir, give me a chance, let me reorganize. No, there is no time left, go now. Orders are orders. You can't push the envelope. So we were the first battalion in the history of the Indian Army to be launched in a heliborne operation. Now in a heliborne or a paradrop operation, the teaching is, unless you are reinforced within 48 hours, you will disintegrate because of casualties, lack of ammunition, lack of water, lack of food, and that was what was happening. We were told that you will be reinforced in 48 hours. We were never reinforced. We fought for 9 days and 9 nights without food, without water, with diminished ammunition. Yeah, but something saved us. A BBC correspondent who didn't know the difference between a battalion and a brigade said, a brigade of Gurkhas has landed at Sylhet. So we decided to pretend that we were a brigade. So we pushed our companies out, and that's very risky because the LMGs and the MMGs can't link up. Anyway, after on the 9th day, 2 Pakistani officers came with white flags. They wanted to surrender. So the CO said, if they come to know how small we are, maybe they'll change their minds. So he told them, tell them to go back and continue the fight. We have got no orders to accept your surrender. Then the spokesman said, but can we talk to the brigade commander? So then we knew the bluff had worked. So we said, you come tomorrow at the same time. And then we got through to the brigade commander, for God's sake, come and take the surrender tomorrow. So he came in a chopper, and the Pakistani brigade commander said, is chopper mein kaun aaya? So he said, I have come. Aren't you the brigade commander? He said, yes, I am the brigade commander. He said, aren't you here? He said, no. Where are you? I'm 100 miles away. Then he said, what is here? He said, it's a Gurkha battalion, and that too only half a battalion. At that time, we were 352. But we got the shock of our lives when 3 brigade commanders, 2 colonels, 170 officers 290 JCOs and 8,000 troops surrendered to us. We were 352.
Meanwhile, there's this other book also that you can pick up amongst his many, which has 13 stories that are going to make you sit up, pause, think, and then spare a thought for the armed personnel who are on the borders right now, while we're sitting here and enjoying this warm sun in Kasauli, going about our lives. And they're stories of immense bravery, and all of them about overcoming something that is the most base human emotion, which is fear. The first thing a child learns, don't touch a candle or something hot. How is it, if you could just talk to us about that? You've lived your life among people who have overcome that at every step.
This business about conquering fear, there is no policy in the army or procedures to train people not to be afraid. But our life is such, our values are such, that make us understand that we've got to do our job. We have a task at hand. The country is at risk. You are dispensable. Officers, the JCOs, the men are dispensable. But the honor of India is not dispensable. And what are those values? The value of love. Now, you will say, what does this Fauji know about love? But it's on the altar of love that men and women in uniform put their lives on the line of fire and disappear in the smoke and fire of battle. It is love for the country, love for the people of India, love for our soldiers, love for adventure, love for the regimental tradition which teaches us how to live and how to die. It is leadership. It is self-respect. All these values combined together, there's no question about being afraid. And then there's a question of honor. All these values come from honor. Honor of India, honor of the Indian Army, honor of our regiments, honor of the life we live. At the risk of taking a little time, yeah?
You're the boss.
Tell you a story about what happened in 1965. There was an officer called Captain Desmond Haid. He was my platoon commander in the IMA, and he said, war battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground. And he proved that at the Battle of Dograe. He was asked to capture Dograe. Normally when we attack a feature, an objective, the strength has to be 3-1. Why? Because people are going to die. People are going to be dying on the minefields, on the barbed wire, artillery fire, MMG fire, etc. So when you reach the objective, you should be at least as strong as the enemy holding that objective. But there was no 3-1 ratio. It's 1-1. And he said, it's not a problem. I'll get it for you. He had noticed that all the bunker loopholes were facing in a particular direction. He went from behind, and before the enemy knew what was happening, he had captured Dograe, killed about 50, 60 people, captured prisoners, and Dograe was ours. Again, we are taught, what you do is not enough. Walk the extra mile. And he then, because the Corps had been tasked with threatening Lahore, so he said, I'll do that on my own. And he took the battalion from Dograe, went to a place called Batapur, which was 12 kilometers from Lahore, and sat there. But now, the Pakis would use all their might to destroy that battalion. He was supposed to be reinforced. The reinforcement never took place. He was called back. And the Jats, 3 Jats, took it as an insult to the reputation of their regiment. And they said, this is not on. We gave our lives for this objective. Many have been wounded. Why did you get us back? You see, we couldn't help it. But the task still remained. Lahore had to be threatened. And a brigade was now going to capture Dograe. But Dograe had been reinforced by this time. by an armored regiment, by another battalion, by a brigade in fact. And they said, Dogra has to be recaptured. So Haid said, that is our destiny. It is the honor of the Jats, the comb of the Jats to capture Dogra, and we will do it alone. He said, you can't do it alone. He said, we will do it alone. And he did it again. He captured Dogra, but before that, the night before, he talked to his troops, and he said, it is an insult to the regiment that we've been called back. We will capture, this capture of Dogra is our responsibility. We will capture Dogra. And many of you will die. Many of you will be wounded. But I will be with you. And if I die, I want you to carry my body to Dogra. I want you to see that I am there tomorrow morning. And then he said, when will, sorry, where will we be tomorrow morning? And the battalion roared, in Dogra. And they captured Dogra again. That is what honor is all about. Honor of India. I'm getting overcharged. Because the battle at Dogra is a great story. So that's about honor. And then it's also about leadership. Leading men into battle is a privilege given to very few. But it is an awesome responsibility which falls on the shoulders of very young officers. But those officers have been trained. They lead from the front. They do not say, "Tum aage jao, main aa raha hu." They say, "Mere piche move. Move, follow me." And the soldiers of the Indian Army, the best in the world, follow their young officers. Follow their young officers because they know that he's there right in front, taking the brunt of the enemy fire. In the 71 war, my battalion, as I told you, started with 18 officers. We ended the war, 13-day war, a short war, with only 7 were left. 4 were killed and 7 were wounded. So officers take the brunt. But the point is, leadership is what matters. Good leadership dispels fear. It applies not only to the army, it applies to the corporate sector, it applies to everybody. So, there are lessons to be learned from what the army does. Leadership is important. I talked about honor, I talked about love, I talked about leadership, and also about never giving up. Can you imagine the CO of my battalion fighting for 9 days and 9? He was responsible for the lives of his men. But he made sure that it worked. So I think I will...
You know, but Major General, I don't want to only gloss over things. Not everything is, life in the army isn't just about rose-tinted, looking at everything through rose-tinted glasses. You've had to battle with demons in your head. I'm talking about the time after your leg was amputated. It had to be amputated twice, making it shorter and shorter. And when you were recovering at an army hospital in Pune, you talked about how you were worried about the future and what would happen to you and to people like you. Who would you ever be able to command forces? Would you ever be able to be promoted? And I want to just, with your permission, just read out this one para. You had said, you wrote that it felt as if we who had fought for the flag and had been part of the great victory of 1971 were now being left behind. India and the army were moving forward without us. Had the Indian army forgotten us? Did we not belong anymore? We who did not count the cost. Was I being punished for being wounded in battle? Were we, the battle casualties, winners or losers? It was as if something died inside of me. My small world had been turned upside down. Would I never go back to my battalion again? What choice did I have? What path could I take? And what fate was waiting men like us? You talk about the Chelmsford philosophy, I think, of the army, where you put the welfare and the safety and security and the honor of your country first, then of your troops, and finally yourself. But you also write that people brought up in the army, officers, soldiers, etc., with that philosophy are today struggling in this new world that we all live in, where greed, self-interest is at the front, at the core. The belief, you also talked about how the belief that army officers should not be compensated, that leaves them with their honor intact, but not much in their pocket. Could you talk about this aspect?
Yeah. This is not something I'd like to talk about, but it is the truth.
This is the TV journalist in me, I apologize. I kept it low for the first half of the discussion.
It's the truth. When I was in hospital, after I was discharged from hospital, I got a letter from the Controller of Defense Accounts, CDAO, which told me I had three amputations, one on the battlefield and two later on. It takes time for skin to grow over a stump, 4 months. And then you're going to learn how to walk and run and swim and whatever. So I was in hospital for 9 months. The rule, according to CDA, is that if you are in hospital for more than 6 months, you will now be on half pay. So I was put on half pay. Was that fair? I was put on half pay by a bureaucratic rule. The unfortunate part, this happened in 65, it happened in 71, it happened in 1999. It took 40 years for the government to change this rule. Why did it happen? Is there no consideration for the soldier? Why do these things happen? Why were today, my wife and I were leaving for UK about 2019 or 2016, when the Raksha Mantri, the Rajnath Singh, put a bill in Parliament that the exemption of income tax on the pensions of battle casualties will now be removed. So Barkha Dutt asked me to come and speak. I said, Barkha, I'm leaving for the UK, I've got to pack. He said, sir, this is very important, you have to come. So I spoke and I left the next day, and the papers were full of it the next day. Rajnath had to withdraw that bill. No, but today, what are they doing? Pension cannot be stopped. The disability pension now, the government is trying to get over this business by calling it something else. Yeah, so they're still wanting to do away. Why are they targeting us? What is their problem? Shades of 1962? Who will be responsible and accountable for what happens in the next war? If you treat battle casualties so bad, who is going to stick his neck out in the next war? Who is going to speak for us? No army officer in uniform is allowed to speak, particularly against the government. We who are retired are given a shut-up call. It is up to you all. You need to fight for us. If you think that we are doing a good job, to ensure that you can do your job, you can sleep in peace, then I think the country owes us something. And this is not fair. I can say more, but I'm not a politician. We don't talk politics. But there's a deep hurt and resentment in all of us at the way the army is being treated. No serving officer can speak. And we have been told, keep quiet. So who will speak for us? What will happen in the next war? Agnipath? 4 years training? These are important questions which you all need to think about. Thank you, Sarah, for asking me this question. I have to.
My job is easy with General. I don't have to do anything. I was going to ask you about Agnipath. You've already explained how you feel about that in no uncertain words. Let me then just quickly, I know I want to move on. The other controversial issue, women in combat roles. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, if you read Beyond Fear, there are 13 stories about how we in the army overcome fear. 4 stories are about women. Why women? Women, army wives, army mothers are the backbone of the army. Without them, we cannot do our job. Mothers, if you read Paramveer, my first book, there are 21 stories, and in most of those stories, it is army mothers who have told their children, brought them up on stories of the armed military and civil icons who fought for the freedom of India. That is how their courage was shaped, their character was shaped, their conduct was shaped. So, army mothers. Army wives. My own wife told me, Ian, don't worry about me. You do your job. Everything will follow. God is there. So the point is, if we don't give credit to our army wives and army mothers, then it's a shame. Of the 4 stories, one is about an army mother, one is about an army wife, and 2 are about army doctors who did a great job in war. And read the stories.
But sir, let me again push on this. In the crass TV journalist question, we will ask, you can put women on a pedestal, woman is ma, but why not in combat roles? So your response to women in combat roles in the army?
This is a question, a very ticklish question, which I have no ready answer. But if you read the first story, it's about a lady doctor of my regiment, 3rd 5 Gurkha Rifles Frontier Force, who the battalion was posted, he was posted to Jammu, to the battalion, and the battalion was tasked to go to a field area, to operational area in the valley. So she volunteered to go, and the army said, no, you can't go. If anything happens to you, we'll get a bad press, we'll have a problem, so you can't go. But I was the colonel of the regiment at that. The brigade commander, div commander, corps commander said, no, you can't go. So she came to me as colonel of the regiment, and I said, okay, you'll go. So she thought, look at this guy, this old man. He doesn't understand what he's up against. But, cut a long story short, I made sure that she went. And she went and became the first woman in uniform to be given a gallantry award for courage under fire. So, that is not a combat role. That is work in a combat situation. Combat role means there are lots of issues involved where women, I feel, my personal feeling, I may be wrong, that there's a limit to what a man can do. There are also limits to what a woman can do. And that line should be respected. That's what I feel.
All right, 13 stories in this book. As the general said, 4 are about women, 2 are about, any guesses? God. Could you touch on that and why?
Bhagwan. The Indian army is very spiritual. We all believe in God. The paths to that God are different, but there is no difference whatsoever between us. We are one big family. In some mixed units, we have the Gurdwara, the Mandir, the Masjid, the Girjagar all together. In one such unit, when they had a Panditji and a Maulvi, the Panditji's father died. It was Janamastami. Who conducted the ceremonies? It was the Maulvi. So the thing is this. You look at what happened in 1971. We had an army chief who was a Parsi. We had an army commander, Eastern Command, where the battle was fought, war was fought, Eastern Command, who was a Sikh. The strategist who worked out all the strategy for the war in East Pakistan, although it was a difference with army headquarters, was a Jew called General J.F.C. Jacob. The DMO, Director of Military Operations in Delhi, was General Indrajit Singh Gill, who was an Anglo-Indian, because his mother was British, his father was a Sikh. Out of the 9 div commanders who spearheaded the operations, 3 were Christians. So what is this all about? We who are taught that there's no distinction of caste or creed, when we come out of uniform and we find all these values are still on its head, we are in a different world altogether. So I don't know whether I've gone astray.
No, you haven't. I think that's the point that we need to take away at the end of this day. I think we have 5 minutes left. Last 2 questions, hopefully. I want to just go back to craft, because like I said, this book is, as a journalist, I just think it's a journalistic marvel, because it has so much research, so much fact. It documents history. That, I think, is Sir's greatest legacy. This is what we need. My generation needs to know what has happened in the past. Can you tell us about craft and rigor of writing? I know that you talked about how you kept a notebook. You had the foresight to keep a little notepad where you jotted down everything, including phrases that he heard and liked and enjoyed. Just take us through that, the craft of writing.
I owe this.
Your stories are so fantastic. I mean, it's larger than life. You don't need that background. You could still keep the viewer engrossed just by leaving it to, oh, this is, you know, and then the plane, brakes failed, etc., etc. It's all exciting. It's like a movie script.
See, the focus of my writing has always been to bring the armed forces closer to the citizens of India. And what you have asked, this little notebook which I made, I owe this to my young son. He was 8 years old, and he had his book of dreams. And I said, I need to have my own book of dreams. And I noted down things of consequence about people, incidents, which helped me to write my books today and tomorrow. So, when I wrote my first book, Paramveer, I wrote it in hand, because the computers had just come. I wrote it 5 times in my long hand, because in the NDA I learnt, you may not be a great author, but if you take pains, if you work hard, if you put your heart and soul in it, maybe you'll write a good story. And that book has been reprinted 14 times. But I used to work at night till about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I used to wake up Priscilla, my wife, and tell her, now put it into the computer. So both of us are responsible for that book. But the point is this: whatever you do, you have got to put your heart and soul in it. That's what the army teaches us. Without that, nothing is really achieved. So, and today, in the evening of our lives, I'm still writing, because not much time left. So much to write about. So, more people need to write. More people need to tell their story. There's so much happening in the army today. Great things are happening. More people must write about what makes us what we are. And I think we are the finest army in the world. I hope it remains that way and not destroyed by people who try to put us down. Yesterday, Manishankar Iyer said that the brigade in Delhi is kept at a low strength because why? They think we're going to take over this country? And then they have to bring the brigade from Meerut. And the brigade from Meerut came after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, and we took over. My battalion was part of it. Now, here are the values which come in. The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi was traveling at night in his car. And the Second Lieutenant Rajpal Singh, he stopped the vehicle. He said, "Sir, where do you think you're going?" He said, "I am the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, and this is my right." He says, "No, sorry, sir. It is my right to protect you. You're not supposed to be traveling. It's curfew from dusk to dawn." So he says, "I have given passes to people." He says, "No, sir. Curfew is curfew. We've taken over. No one can move at night." Now, sir, I will give you an escort to take you to where you come from, the Raj Bhavan. Please don't travel at night. A second lieutenant talking to the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. And then another British correspondent came in a jeep, and he was stopped. He said, where do you think you're going? He says, I'm a journalist. It's my right. He says, not your right during curfew hours. He took the keys, put a Gurkha driver and said, take him to the police station. And tell the police station he's not to be released till tomorrow morning. So when you give the army a task, it will be done 100%. There are no ifs and buts. If there is a problem, we need to be called on time and not late, like in 1984 and what is happening in Manipur. We need to be called on time, and we will sort it out.
Apologies, I should have come to the audience earlier. Please, if does anyone have questions? Last one. Any questions? Go ahead, sir. Do you have one?
That's fine. But as a courageous, bold general, we expected a bold answer from you. What is holding you back, sir, is my query.
Should we take more questions in the interest of time? Go ahead. Sure. Go ahead, ma'am, till then. Have mine. I'll share the general.
Thank you. Hello. Sir, the question regarding women in combat role. Yes, I think his question, I am adding on to that question so that you can answer it in one go. I have been interacting also with, I'm an army officer myself, I'm Colonel Ajit Nagrani. I've been interacting with people in service after the women have come into the army. And they have been telling me, don't worry, sir, there is no dilution in standards. So I said, is that so? He said, yes. How are you ensuring that? He says, now, because of the BPT tests, for women, it's no more a 9-foot jump. It's a 7-foot jump. For those who don't understand this, battle physical efficiency tests, there are a few of them in the army, conducted every year. And a ditch has to be jumped over, that is 9-feet ditch. A rope has to be climbed, a run has to be done within a specific amount of time, and so on. I will now bring you back to this 9-foot ditch. It is 9 foot across for all the men who are in the army, and 7 foot for the women. You've diluted your standard by 2 feet as it is. You cannot tell the enemy that, look, women are attacking you, so don't make a ditch 9 foot, make it 7 feet. You can't do that. So this is my question, sir. Could you please elaborate on this, and let's, as he says, be a bit bold about it and not a diplomatic answer. Thank you, sir.
Let's take ma'am's question.
Give her the mic, please.
Hello. My question is that what is happening in Manipur, how long will it take for army to control it?
And one question here, and then General can answer them both.
Since he mentioned 1984, yesterday Manishankar Iyer was sitting on the platform, same platform, and what happened in 1984, I am a part of that community. I also want to ask, why was not some kind of measure taken to impose and put a stop to all the massacre that happened? And Manishankar Iyer is one of the members who belonged to the government that was responsible for it. I still want an answer for 1984, the massacre. So many leaders, they are always open to these kind of attacks. But unfortunately, such a reaction to any assassination has never taken place as far as I know in history, as it did in 1984.
All right.
River. They just sit on the platform, people like Mani Shankar Iyer, and talk great, very smug, been to Vellums, and all the credits they have. But what is their values they talk of, principles?
Last question here, and then you can talk on women in combat, Manipur. I think Manipur and Sikh rights can be put together.
Can I also, for saving time, sir, I'll just last question. You said, sir, that the retired generals or retired officers are asked to shut up. When we have so much courage, sir, can you dwell on that? How are we stopped? I'm not a very senior officer, but certainly a war hero like you who is in so much of limelight and this thing. And whenever, be it the matter of pension or be it something else which you mentioned, that you are asked to shut up, we show so much courage in the war. And then how are we being this thing? And can something be done about it if all of us talk? And then we can maybe talk loud enough and we are not shut up. Thank you.
Okay. So now there are basically 4 questions which are resolved into 2. One is about women in combat. 2 questions, 1 answer. And the other is about
84 in Manipur.
Manipur and 84. Now, I'll take the second question first. I'm not a politician. I'm a soldier. In the army, we are taught, in the mess, you will not discuss religion and politics because that divides the army. So, how can I speak as to what the government did or did not do? My contention as a soldier is, why was the army called in late in 1984? If they were called, yes, if we were called on time, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I understand what you feel. All of us feel the same. If the army's task, the army's role is security of the country from external aggression and internal dissension. But we need to be called on time. If you are not called on time, who's to blame for it? Exactly what you are saying, ma'am.
Literature says, why are people who are involved in politics?
Ma'am, we'll have to...
I agree with you.
I want sir to be able to answer the other questions also.
So, ma'am, I cannot answer for the politicians. Can I? I ask you all. Should I answer for the politicians?
I'll ask ma'am to meet up with you later. You're here for the whole day.
All
You
right,
can
yeah.
spend time with her. If you could
Yeah.
answer the other 2
So,
questions.
the other question was about
Women in combat. It's
Women in
touched a chord
combat.
here with our audience.
See, I retired from the army 30 years ago. I'm not into exactly what is happening. I am disturbed, just as you are. Now, I mentioned very clearly, I don't know what more you want me to say. There is a distinct division between men and women. There are things that men can do which women cannot do, and there are things that women can do which men cannot do. Do you agree? If that is so, then why should women be asked to join in combat? The army has gone out of its way to get the women in, not only in the services, ASC, ordnance, intelligence, EME, also in the combat support arms, in the engineers, now in the artillery. But in infantry, I'm sorry. I've given you my opinion.
Yes, you have.
And I want to say it very clearly. I don't believe that women in combat can join the infantry. No way.
Last, I just want 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Major General, why do you wear this yellow marigold?
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, the British have the poppy as a flower of remembrance of the war dead of the Commonwealth countries. We have got freedom 75 years ago. Do we still need to have the poppy as the flower of remembrance, handed down by the colonialists? I am not saffronized. I am not BJP. I am not Congress. I am an army officer. And I am saying we have the marigold as a flower from birth to death. It represents India in all its cultural, social values. Why can't we have the marigold?
You wrote a poem about this. I don't have it actually on me. Do you remember it?
No. Priscilla, can I have a copy of that? Can somebody please? Oh, thank you.
My question, I haven't written up these.
Okay, yeah.
So I had asked this question, so what stops you said that, I mean, the generals or the retired officers are asked to shut up. So how are we, when we have hung our uniform, be juniors or seniors, be pertaining to pension, how can we be shut up?
Okay, so what are you doing about it? No. See,
this is one of the opportunities.
I am not the only officer of the Indian Army who's a spokesman for all retired people. I've told you, I spoke out against the Raksha Mantri. He had to withdraw that bill. I'm here now in Kasauli, and I've just got to know that the government is now trying to stop our disability pension by calling it by a different name.
Compensatory relief.
Yeah, I will do something about it when I go back. But the point is, am I the only guy? You are also there.
Yes, sir. But when you said that you were asked to shut up.
No.
Sorry, can I suggest that you please take this up over a cup of
Army
tea
officers
with
in
General
uniform
Cardozo?
are told to shut up.
I think the irony is we can't get anyone in positions of authority to even take a press conference, but we'll put people up like Major General and then pepper them with questions. So that's not fair. Please have the last word, Major General, a man who has done the most, I think, as a commander, because he has immortalized the lives of his men in our history books, in books like these. For that, we are all grateful. Last word to you, sir. Please read out the poem that you have written.
But to answer your question, I think we all need to put our shoulders together. Let's fight this together. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to add, we have only one life to live. We need to live it to the full. Life is an adventure or it is nothing. Please get your kids to join the armed forces. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very moving, very inspiring session. Rahul wants to come up and have a special note of thanks to General Cardozo and Sarah.
So can I read the poem?
Please, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I get forgetful. I'm 87 years old. The marigold. Our marigold, the simple flower, in many ways, it meets the hour of valiant soldiers who in combat die and to their maker skywards fly. From ancient times, this favorite bloom has commemorated womb to tomb of life and death in equal measure, and other moments we all treasure. But at time of war, this flower sheds its fragrant petals to mourn her dead. For those who fought for you and me and sacrificed their destiny. So pause a moment, all who care, and offer up in silent prayer this sacred flower for a soldier's death, to remember that last most precious breath. Thank you, ladies.
General Cardozo, I would like to add my thanks, and Sarah, what a wonderful job you did. you're a professional on TV. I know we've seen you all on TV. I wish we could continue seeing you on TV. General Cardozo, I don't think there has ever been a standing ovation for a speaker. And I'd also like to say that the Khushwant Singh Foundation would like to make a very small contribution to the War Wounded Foundation that you run. It's small partly because we don't have that many funds, but we have friends here who've been helping us in crowdfunding. I'd like to thank them also. But the reason that funding has been a little is because the landslides, the climate change and all the flooding that has taken place all over Himachal. So the Himachal Pradesh government has not been able to come to our assistance. But again, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, General Cardozo. Yeah.
What a wonderful session.